Okay, now I'm going to talk about some of the things that's happened in the recent years, like since, I met my husband, started my family, all that. When I was 18, I remember I got my first job at this restaurant called Zazio's. It was in Birmingham, Michigan, but right now that location is closed, and they still have the other location in Kalamazoo. The food there is good. If you want to try it, I suggest you try it. They still have the one location in Kalamazoo, Michigan. But I started my job there as a server assistant, a busser, because I already knew that I didn't want to be a server, because that's where you got to be around you got to be around customers all the time, constantly. And it was a fine dining restaurant, so you would have to open up the wine in front of them, and these were upscale people. Birmingham, Michigan, that's where the rich people live, and so you have to pour their wine in their glass a certain way, and all this. I don't know, it was just very nerve-wracking, and I knew I didn't want to do that. So I was a server assistant, and it was a new restaurant. When I had actually interviewed there, it was still being built, but we interviewed on the inside of it, but a lot of the outside was still getting built. And I remember I nailed the interview. I remember the person, it was a woman, she asked me a question. Her name was Erin. She asked me a question. She was like, if you were at an amusement park, no, she asked me, if you could, what would be something that you would do that you would absolutely enjoy and that you would have a lot of fun doing? And I said, I would love to be on a roller coaster at an amusement park, because I love, having that thrill and having my adrenaline rushing. And I think I did good in that interview, and the way that they viewed me, they probably saw my personality as someone who was bubbly and outgoing and all that. And she introduced me to the chef after the interview, and introduced me to the head manager, the general manager of the restaurant. And I felt good about the interview, and of course I got the job. And so we had like a 2-week training session. During the training, we tried all the food, and we were allowed to train on how we would treat the customers. And so the first few times they let us try it out on our family. So for the first week, we could have our family come and eat food for free. And so I would have my family come out, and my husband and my uncle and my mother came, and my firstborn son, Junior, they all came. And after the shift, my uncle and my husband told me, Jabez said, you were standing in the corner the whole time. You weren't even interacting with the customers. And I was trying to, be stubborn. I was like, I was standing in the corner because they told us to just stay there to be available for the customers. And I was just making excuses every time someone would tell me something about, how I was when I was at work. And I remember I had a lot of issues with coworkers there, and I was late a few times because my uncle had to take me to work, because I was terrified to catch the bus, because there's a lot of crime in Detroit. Birmingham is a suburb of Detroit, but I actually lived in Detroit. So I would have had to catch catch one Detroit bus and then catch the Smart Bus, which was, the Smart Bus is the city bus for the suburbs around Detroit. So I was scared. And plus the area that I would have caught the bus to, when I would have got off of the Detroit bus, that area is where a lot of prostitutes are, drug dealers, all that, and I was terrified to catch the bus. And a few times my uncle brought me to work late, and they would complain. And I heard this from one of my coworkers, that when I wasn't there, a lot of people would complain and say that she shouldn't work here. A lot of us here work hard for our job, and she shouldn't work here because she's coming to work late and all this. And I had a discussion with my with the general manager and the lady that interviewed me, and then I discussed the issue with them, and then they basically said that it was a warning, and then after that, if there's any more issues, I would basically be put on probation, and then after that, if there was an issue, I would have to be let go. And so it was getting closer to the time that the restaurant was going to open, and it was getting a lot of attention, and news reporters were coming out trying the food, and journalists were coming out and trying the food in the Detroit area and Birmingham area, suburb area. And I remember I was getting nervous, more and more nervous, because I'm like, people were coming there with cameras and everything. And so in my head, like every time someone would ask me something, I would always make it an excuse. So I called my uncle one day and I said, could you come pick me up? And he said, why? And I said, well, I just want to quit. And then he didn't even ask me anything about it until we got home. And then he said, why do you want to quit? And I told him, well, I wanted to quit because she said they were going to fire me anyway if I'm late. And I know that I'm going to be late again, so I might as well quit. But the real reason was because I was getting nervous. The restaurant was about to open, and there were a lot of people there with cameras, and just, it also made me nervous that I was around rich people, because in my mind, wealthy people, like, they look down on people like me. Like, they're like, oh, look at her, she's raggedy or whatever. So it really made me self-conscious to be around a lot of rich people and people with money, and it was a lot of pressure for me, and I just couldn't handle it anymore. But if anyone asked me that, my mother or my uncle, I would automatically tell them I quit because I was going to get fired anyways. But my husband, now he knows the real reason. And so then I started that job in May of 2010, and I quit it in July 2010, right before the restaurant was about to open. And so then I got another job in August of 2010 at a Quiznos sub in Southfield, Michigan. And I wasn't getting a lot of hours there. I was working like 3 hours a day. They just wanted me for lunchtime because they have a huge lunch rush. And so I was working there, and when they said they had a lunch rush, I really didn't understand. But there were a lot of people there, like, lined up, because it was in a plaza with the Meijer there, and Meijer is a grocery store in Michigan, for all you people who don't know about Meijer. Meijer, they had Meijer in that same plaza, shoe stores, and just, it was a big plaza. And so it was people there who were doing a lot of shopping, and then they would stop there for lunch. So it was a lot of people lined up outside the door, curved around the building. And so I'm rushing, and at the same time they were still training me. I wasn't even finished with my training yet. So while they were training me, I was learning and then trying to keep up with the pace at the same time. So that's kind of difficult to do, like learn. For me, it is to learn and then rush, move fast, and you're still learning. And so I remember one time it was a lady dressed up in, camouflage outfit, like she was in the army. And she was like giving me a rude look because I guess I didn't make her food right or something. She asked me, because I remember she wanted a tuna sub, and I guess I didn't put enough tuna on there, and she's like, can I get more? And she just spoke to me in a real, spoke to me with a lot of attitude. And so I added more, and I was like, is that okay? And she said, yeah. And she was just rolling her eyes, and she was just very irritated with me, and that just made me, I remember I got very nervous, and I kept on messing up on everything. And people look at you because they notice that you're nervous, and they notice that you're, that you're uncomfortable. And so that made me more uncomfortable. And then it was embarrassing. My coworkers and the manager, they ended up sending me to wash the dishes in the back. And so I ended up washing dishes and everything, and my manager came back and complained to me about that and said that I'm using too much water and that I should wash it with cold water, and so it was like, I just felt like a failure. I feel like everything I'm doing, I'm getting yelled at. They're complaining about something. Oh, and this is another incident that happened. I signed up to be a team member there. And I remember one time my manager, he wanted me to, because I had a car at that time, and he wanted me to deliver some food to this office because, you know, it was a group of people who wanted food. And so he gave me the address of the place. I put the address in my GPS, and I'm driving around, and the GPS is telling me go this way. But I'm looking like, I'm thinking to myself, how can I go this way? Because it was a highway right there. It was a freeway right there. So I'm like, I can't go that way. It's not on the freeway. And so like, I'll try to go that way, and then when I get on the freeway, it'll say I passed it. And I'm going around Southfield, like I'm driving all around looking for it. And I was so embarrassed, and I remember I stopped and I parked somewhere, and I called my husband. I'm like, I'm about to come home. The only problem is I left my purse in my locker, and I can't just leave, so I would have to go back to the building, and I would be so embarrassed if I go back to the building and grab my purse and they see me, and I don't know what to do. Can I pick you up and then you go in there and get my purse? I don't know. I was just coming up with all these different scenarios, and I was just so nervous and scared. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know where this location is that he's talking about. And so I go back to Quiznos. I called my manager and told him about it, and he said, I gave you the address. And so I put the address in. I told him that I put the address in. And so he's like, okay, come back and pick me up, and then we'll look for it together. And so I put it in my GPS, and I let him see what my GPS said. And then he said, okay, go this way. We went the same way that my GPS told me the first time. And we couldn't figure out where it was. And so then we finally figured out that it was actually right down the street, and that the street that it was on was the freeway that was right there that I kept getting on was called Northwestern Highway. And the street right next to the Quiznos was called Northwestern Highway too. It was right off of the freeway. So the street Northwestern Highway was where we were supposed to go. And so we finally pull up go to the building. It was in a hotel, and we tried to deliver the food, and they were all yelling at us, we don't want that, take that back. And you know, my my manager had already told me what to say. Just tell them that you're new and that you're sorry and that you didn't know. And so I tried to explain that to them when we opened the door. He told me to say that to them, and my manager is trying to explain himself, and they said, no, we want a refund. And you know, and my manager was, and you know, they were so upset. They were looking at us. They were very angry. And my manager told me, okay, I'm going to keep the food. Don't tell anyone there, none of my coworkers or anything. Don't tell anyone that I'm keeping the food. Just tell them that we delivered the food and that everything went okay. And so when we went back, my manager told me to park in the back of the building, and he went in through the back and hid the food in the back. And then we went, and then I went to the front of the store, and then, you know, my coworkers, there were two other women. They were all Indian people, and they were like, so what happened? Did everything go okay? And I'm like, yeah, everything went okay. And so the manager, he came out and said the same thing. Everything went okay, and I had to lie about that. And after that incident, I quit. I quit that job. I was there like 2 weeks, and then from there, I didn't have a job until, I'm trying to think. After that, I didn't have a job until just recently. I just got a job in 2013, last year. When I moved here to Las Vegas last year in May. And I just want to let you know I didn't have any job longer. I haven't had a job longer than 2 months ever. And every time when I'm about to get done with my training, I always quit. Like, I always quit. When I'm about to be on my own and have to do something, I just get nervous and quit. And that's what I hope that I could get past and actually stay at a job. But so I moved here in May, Las Vegas, and me and my family are out here. My mother is out here. My sister, who I grew up with, she's still in Detroit. My uncles and aunts are in Detroit. My dad, my biological dad, is here. And my mother, who is my grandmother, my dad's mother, like I said, she's here. We all moved here together. And so I had my son, Jelani. I was pregnant with him when we moved here, but I had my son, Jelani, in August. And so I was just very motivated to get a job. I'm like, we need more income. I need a job. I need a job. The whole time I was pregnant, I was actually looking for jobs while I was pregnant, but stop, because I knew that once I got to the interview process that no one would hire me. And so, like 3 weeks after I had my baby, I was looking for a job. I joined a vocational program where they would help you find a job, and the guy told me, I was so embarrassed because he looked at my resume and he was like, I can't believe you haven't had a job. You haven't had a job, and you've only been working for this amount of time. And because I told him that I wanted to do housekeeping work, because my stepmother, my dad's wife, she told me, if you do housekeeping work, that they get paid good here in Las Vegas, and you should try that. And so I'm thinking, if I get that training through this program, then I could do that like I want to do. And he told me, I can't have you do any housekeeping training. You need to prove to me that you can keep a job first. And so, of course, I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. And he said, I want you to have a job by October 1st. And I had saw him in September. And so I'm looking for a job. He told me, if you don't have a job by October 1st, I'm going to be very disappointed in you. And so finally, I got a job at Sears as a cashier. We did like 2 weeks of computer training, and it was time for me to train on the register, and it made me nervous for the simple fact that they wanted us to do credit card applications, and that made me nervous because I saw how the customers react when you try to get them to sign up for the Sears credit card. And I saw a lot of customers say, no, you guys always ask me that when I come here, and I just want to buy my stuff and leave. And it made me nervous because I saw how they were treating the person that was training me. So I'm like, oh my God, what have I got myself into? And based on what the manager said, it depends on how many applications you get, of how many hours you're going to get. So if you don't get a lot of people to fill out applications, you're not going to get a lot of hours. So I'm like, oh my God, like, what situation have I gotten myself into? And plus I'm nervous being around people, nervous being around customers. It was just a bad situation. And then I never knew how to work a cash register, and so they were teaching me how to do that. And the person who was training me actually walked off a few times, and I was nervous standing there by myself looking around. And I remember at one point she told me, you need to do this on your own. I can't teach you how to do everything. And I don't know, I just felt stupid. I'm like, I don't even know how to work the cash register. I can't even stand here by myself and work the cash register, because there were some people who trained the same time that I did, and they were already on the registers by themselves. And here I am, still getting trained and still having someone basically babysitting me. But I just felt uncomfortable, and I was just biding time so that I could take as much time as I needed before I get on the register and be by myself and do it on my own. And so, long story short, I ended up quitting that job, and then I got a job as a cashier at Walmart in December of 2013. And I did the computer training, and then when it was time for me to, they put me on a register with someone else around, Black Friday. And so I actually got the job in November. I quit in December. And I remember one of the women that were training me was a black woman. She was like in her 40s or 50s. She was very serious and just serious. And I have my hands in my pocket because it kind of calms my nerves if I put my hands somewhere. Because if I have them out, then I'll be doing all this, and just nervous being around all those people. Because Black Friday, that's when there's crowds and crowds of people, and I was getting nervous, and I could feel myself getting nervous. So I put my hands in my pocket, and I remember she told me, take your hands out of your pockets, you can't do that, and spit that gum out. And I was chewing a gum because I chew gum a lot to calm my nerves, and I spit the gum out, but she told me to take my hands out of my pocket, and I took them out. But then it was just a natural reaction. I just put my hands back in my pocket, and I didn't even realize that I did. And so the lady, she was rolling her eyes at me and everything. And long story short, I ended up quitting that job. And then I joined another program, vocational program like the one I joined in September. It was called, it's like for youth, like ages 17 to 21. And I joined that program. They help you find jobs and help you to help you with the funding if you want to get in certain programs like CNA programs, medical assistant programs, stuff like that. Whatever kind of program you want to get in, they help